I think that you can tell that I was in a reading slump this past month, or maybe it's because I was just reading thickish books. I only read 4 books in September. That is the least amount of books that I have read all year long. And honestly, I wish that I had made it through more than that, but I will say that I am like 90% of the way through another book right now. So technically, I guess I kind of read 5 because today is October 1st and I'm going to be finishing that book, but I'm going to put that book that I'm reading currently in my October wrap up. So today we're just going to be talking about the 4 books that I read in September. The first book that I read, it literally feels like I read this ages ago. Like I can't even believe I read this in September. But that book is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This is an adult fantasy about a woman who grew up in slavery, who is able to break free and run away to a place that she has dreamt of living for her entire life. But she does end up leaving behind a lot of her friends. Her main goal is to free the slaves and save her friends. She joins this group of magic wielders that are like really powerful called the Orders, and she is basically forced into this apprenticeship with Max, who has a past story and actually does not want to apprentice her at all, but eventually they obviously warm up to each other and she makes a deal with the Orders to essentially give her soul and her body to this creature that lives within her in order to have the Orders help her save the slaves and her friends. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I actually found it to be a little bit slow for the first, I would say, half. But I think the end really picked up a lot. Actually, this kind of gives me the same vibes as, it's not the same like story at all, but it gives me like the same feeling as A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first book. I just remember reading ACOTAR and being like, why does everyone love this so much? And being like 75% of the way through, and then the ending hits and I was like, oh, this is why everyone loves this book. So yeah, this book kind of gave me that same vibe. I liked our main character. I thought that she was spunky and brave. A little bit delulu, not gonna lie. And I did like the love interest as well. And I thought that they were cute together, but I will say it wasn't like my favorite romantasy that I've read. I liked the writing style. I also just like love holding this book. Something about the size of it and like the floppiness of it. It's not even that floppy, but it's like sturdy and floppy at the same time. I don't know. Something about the physical book I actually really liked. I will definitely be continuing the series. I think there is 3 books. I don't think there's any more coming out. I think that it's just a trilogy. I've heard that people don't really like the second one as much as the first one, so I'm interested to see how I'll feel. The next book that I read I got from the library, and that's Bunny by Mona Awad. I think I would classify this as dark academia / satire. This is about a girl who is in college and she gets wrapped up with this group of girls that call themselves bunnies, and they're kind of like this club almost. They remind me, and they're kind of made out to be like the typical like Hollywood popular girl. And at first our main character is like avoiding them and kind of like making fun of them with her other friend. But eventually the bunnies invite our main character to their smut salon, which is basically like a get-together to talk about literature and writing. But from the first time she goes to smut salon, things start to feel out of place, I will say. And the lines of reality start to blur. Our main character can't tell what's real life anymore, and we as the reader also cannot tell what is real and what is not real. I ended up giving Bunny a 4.25. I really enjoyed this. I will say while I was reading it, I was just like, what is going on right now? I have no idea what's going on. It was definitely a fever dream. If you like fever dream type books, you would probably love this. I will say this is definitely not going to be for everybody, but I think that the like fever dream and like not knowing like where reality is was actually so intriguing for me. And I will say that even how the book ends, we are still left with questions. So if you do not like books like that, then I don't suggest reading this, because I think a lot of this book is almost left up to the readers to kind of interpret what they think and want from it. And I have never read a book like that, and I really liked it. It's very interesting to explain because it's kind of like I liked it but I didn't like it, and I think that's what brought it down a few points, because I was just so confused that I was like, I don't even know what to think or do with myself reading this book right now. It's a very strange feeling, but in the end, thinking it over, I loved it. And I think it's such an interesting feeling to have when reading a book. I think the uniqueness of that was definitely points up in my book. The other book that I got from the library this month was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is adult sci-fi. I think this is the first sci-fi book I've ever read, to be honest. So this follows our main character, who is a middle school science teacher, and he's actually recruited by this mysterious lady to essentially help save the world because there is almost like a virus attacking the sun. So he's recruited to try and help figure out what this virus is and to study it. But in the end, he actually ends up on the spaceship to a whole different galaxy to try and figure out where the virus is coming from and how to stop it. But when he wakes up on his spaceship, he has no idea where he is, how he got there, what he's supposed to be doing, which is actually my worst nightmare. I ended up giving this book a 3.75. I know that will probably upset some people because this is a very popular sci-fi book right now. I really, really liked the story, and I really, really liked the plot. And that is what brought it up there. But the things that brought it down for me were the writing style, first of all. It took me a long time, probably like the first quarter of the book. I was just kind of icked out by the writing style. You're just kind of like following the main character in his head, and you're seeing just like every single thought that he has. And for some reason, it was just like not it for me. And the second thing that brought it down is actually something that would probably bring it up for some people, and that is all of the science talk in this book. I skipped a lot of this book, you guys. If the main character started to go off about sciencey stuff, I would skip because all I care about was the plot. The plot was amazing. So amazing that I might actually consider bringing this book up to a 4-star because I loved the characters so much and the friendship aspect. And you know what? Yeah, I think I am going to bring this up to a 4 stars because I just honestly think it was so heartwarming, and it was just, it was way too cute to be under a 4 stars. So it's gonna be a 4 stars, you guys. But I will say that the science talk was not it for me. It was not it. Like, it didn't bring anything to the plot for me, and I realized that it's a science fiction book, and that is just the genre, and that's what I was getting myself into, and I don't think that it has anything to do with the book. I think it has to do with me. I've never liked science, ever. I was never good at science. I don't understand science, and honestly, I don't care to understand science. And I think that's really what it is. If I cared to understand, then I feel like it wouldn't have brought my star rating down, but I literally don't care. I wish I did, but the plot was It was so good. And I will say that at a lot of points, my heart was racing, and I just love that. I love when a book can get my heart racing like that. And the last book that I read that I know is probably gonna ruffle some feathers again was Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is the story of a boy who was born in Canton, and everyone that he knew gets sick and dies, and he's actually saved by this Englishman who brings him back to London and starts to teach him about translation. And then he ends up enrolling in Oxford's translation institution, which is called Babel. But as he goes through his journey at Oxford, he begins to realize that Babel isn't exactly on his side. I think he kind of just realizes that Babel is using him for his translation skills. He gets wrapped up in this secret society that is basically stealing from Babel to try and help people in need. This is essentially like a Robin Hood story. Don't hate me, but I ended up giving this book a 3.25. Hi guys, Editing Emma here. After thinking about it a little bit longer, I think I'm gonna bump this up to a 3.75 because I really did love The Found Family, and I loved like the intense emotional aspect of it, and like it was really well put together. The plot was really good. I think initially I just rated it so low because it's just so dense. It's so dense, and I truly did have a hard time getting through it, but when you get down to it, it was a really good story. My rating doesn't have anything to do with the writing style or the story. Just like Project Hail Mary, my rating doesn't really have anything to do with this book. It has to do with me. This was extremely hard for me to get through. I think that the story was amazing. The Found Family was so good. Chef's kiss on the Found Family in this. The premise, also amazing. The plot, amazing. But it had the same issue as Project Hail Mary for me. It was just too dense. It was boring as hell, you guys, for me. Again, I don't think it has to do with R.F. Kuang's writing. I've read Yellowface and I really loved that. Again, I thought that The Found Family was amazing. The plot was really good. I loved the aspect of languages having words that other languages don't have, and there's just no way to express that word unless you're speaking in its native language, if you know what I mean. Like, I loved that aspect of it, and I think there was like a lot of that in here. I also think that the whole silver bar fantasy, like magical element of this was quite interesting as well, but I think a lot of it went over my head. And I think that's really what it is, guys. I think I'm just dumb. I think really that is just what it boils down to, is that I was just not smart enough for this book, I think. Even though The Found Family was amazing, I will say, I think that because of how dense it was, I wasn't really that attached to the characters. Most of the time, I was just bored. The amount of times that I considered DNFing this, to be honest with you guys, I do kind of wish I DNF'd it. I think it was beautiful. I think it was very well written. If you're interested in translation and language, I think you would love this book. It just wasn't for me, unfortunately. I think that this book actually taught me that it's okay to DNF. I have DNF'd books before, but I was just desperately trying to get through this one. I don't know why, because I could have read so many other books that I actually enjoyed instead of spending my time on this. But yeah, I did read it anyway. But that is it, guys. That was like the shortest wrap up ever. I'm so sad that I didn't get to read more. And you know why I didn't get to read more? Because I didn't just DNF Babel. Here's your sign to just DNF books, because I could have read like 2 more books. This took me the majority of the month to read, and I could have been reading the book that I'm reading now that I'm obsessed with, instead. It's just not worth the time to try and push yourself to get through a book. So don't do it. DNF your books, especially if at every single chapter you're like, should I DNF this? Should I DNF this? Just DNF it. But that is all I have for you guys for this month. I have a really exciting reading list for October, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get through a lot of books this coming month, and I'll have a bigger wrap up for you. If you guys love bookish content, I would love it if you would stick around and subscribe. If you like this video, please like and comment. I love chatting with you guys down below. Did you read any of these books? How did you feel about them? What did you guys read in September? Give me some recommendations. I'm trying to grow this channel so that I can do bookish content full-time and support my little family. I have 2 little boys, so I would really love it if you would subscribe, watch some of my other videos, come hang out with me in my little tiny corner of BookTube. But until next time, guys, bye!